Hi, good morning. So this week we're going to be talking about some interesting things in computer ethics, and we're going to actually put into practice some of the things we've been talking about in a scenario that will give you a chance to figure out how to make an ethical decision. How do you do that? We've kind of been talking about what ethics is and what is ethical and working our way around that whole subject, but how do you make a choice based on ethics? So let's take a look at what we have up ahead this week. Let me make sure I get into the right screen here. And I have to apologize, I'm getting head-butted by a very large cat. So can you go play somewhere else? Anyhow, so this week, intellectual property and privacy. So intellectual property has to do with your ideas and the ability to benefit from your ideas in some way. If, let's say you invent something, or you write something, or you do a work of art, something like that, right? That's your intellectual property. So we're going to look at, like, what does that mean and how does technology impact that? And also this issue of privacy. So I put this little example up here because, like, I remember when I was a kid back in the olden days, you'd have a diary and it would have a little lock on it. And you'd stick it under your mattress or in your closet or in a bottom drawer, someplace. Because if somebody saw what was in there, oh my gosh, that would be just the end, right? You'd just die. And now everybody puts everything out there. It's online for everybody to see. The value is counted in the likes and the reactions and the how many shares it gets. It's a very different thing. So we kind of started in one place, we swung way far to the other place, but now the pendulum is kind of going back to the middle. So we had a period of time where everything's out there. Now people are starting to say, like, was that a really good idea? Should I put all these pictures up? Should I post all this stuff? So we're wrestling with the idea of how much is too much, what is useful, and what are the ethics of all of that? That's where we're going to be this week. So down here in the Think section, there are a couple of TED Talks. The first two items here are TED Talks. One's a TED Talk, I believe it's from 2014, but it talks about why privacy matters. Like, why do we even care about this in the first place? And so that's a really interesting one. The future of digital communication and privacy. I don't know, how many of you use WhatsApp? Like, I have it on my phone, and one of the selling points of WhatsApp is that it's got a very strong encryption. So it's kind of locked and it's very secure. Anyhow, that video is going to talk about that and the impact on the future. This third video, this bonus, privacy and civil liberties in a digital age. This is a really long video. I'm just telling you up front. It's almost 2 hours. It's a bonus one. You don't have to watch it, but you know what? Listen to it like while you're doing some other stuff. And even if you pick up a couple of things, I think you'll find it really interesting, because what they've done, Stanford University, in this class that I think would be super fun to take, the ethics of technological disruption. So up in Stanford, up in the Bay Area, they've pulled together some Silicon Valley leaders and some other people to discuss this. Like, what's the trade-off between privacy, the state of data collection, how it gets aggregated, facial recognition technology. All of these things are big issues. So you might find that very interesting to listen to. I know I did. I didn't like sit down and just stare at the screen for 2 hours. When I have something long like that, I usually play it on 1.5 speed, and it's usually while I'm kind of doing some other stuff. But anyhow, it's there for your listening pleasure. Now, down here in the Learn section, this is very practical this week. I'm going to I'm going to talk about this resource last. The first two, the intellectual property crash course, there's a whole series on this in the crash course videos. And as you probably remember, they're all like 10 to 12 minutes long. So they break them up into some nice chunks, and they're very dynamic and engaging. And this one just goes over, like, what is intellectual property? Like, what counts? What's copyright? There's lots of things in that video that gets packed into about 10 minutes. The second one, convergent thinking versus divergent thinking, super short, like 2 minutes, but it's going to come into play in Zoom this week. So if you get a chance, do a quick watch on that one before you come to the Zoom session, because we're going to do that. So that'll help you be prepared for what we're going to do in Zoom. Now, back to this other resource. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail here, okay? Because there is a video that actually does go into a lot of detail. But this document, I'm going to say, I think it's like 5 pages long. This is a short synopsis, and then here's a link to the document down below. What it's going to do is show you this, talk about this 5-step process for making good decisions in ethical scenarios. And so you're going to develop a problem statement like, what's the issue? Most of the time, people have a hard time actually figuring out what the problem is. Identify alternatives. What are the possibilities? I'll give you a hint. That's divergent thinking. Choose an alternative. So what are we going to actually do? That's convergent thinking. Implement the decision. Just try it out. You don't know if it's going to work. You don't know if it's not going to work. Give it a shot. And then evaluate the results, like what actually happened. Okay, how did it work out? And anyhow, this document goes into a lot of detail. And then down at the bottom, there's this thing called a try it scenario. And that's where you're going to start. So that document, you might actually even want to print it off. It might be useful. You can highlight it. You can circle things, whatever you want to do. Then when you come down to the do section, I always like to say, don't do the do, like review the do. So you have an idea of what is going to be done. But don't do the do until you do all the other stuff up above, like look through all the other resources, watch the videos. But what we're going to do this week, like I said, is this project. This video right here goes into all kinds of detail, so I'm not going to repeat that here. But make sure you follow the steps. Got some steps. These are the links you need that are all embedded in other parts of this page, but I put them all up here as a short list, so when you come back to it, you don't have to go look for stuff. It's all right here. But then go through the steps, and basically you're going to evaluate a scenario based on those 5 ethical decisions or ethical steps, and then you're going to do it 2 more times, one for privacy, one for intellectual property. We'll see what you choose and see what you come up with. We'll talk about that in Zoom. And then finally, this week we have Zoom. A lot of people have already signed up, so if you haven't signed up, please make sure you get in there and do that. That's going to, this is going to be one of the most useful, more useful Zoom sessions of the whole semester. And you want to do 2 things. Make sure you come prepared, like make sure you've looked over the project so that at least you can come prepared with some questions about it. And then make sure you look over the crowdsourcing discussions we had a couple of weeks ago, because now that we've used Kialo, we'll talk about that a little more. Now that we're getting the hang of that, now it's time to actually put up some topics. So we need to figure out what topics we're going to put out there. So come with a list of at least 3 topics that you think will make interesting discussions for our class. But look at the class schedule, because don't pick something that we already have. That would be kind of boring. Like I'm not going to choose one that's already on the list. So that's your task for the week. Watch the think ones, learn about the learn things, do the do things, sign up for Zoom, and we'll see you online.